Hi, I'm Douglas Mason, President and CEO of Rainy Mountain Royalty Corp., RMO, on the TSX Venture Exchange. Rainy Mountain Royalty Corp. is a Canadian-based mineral exploration project generator. The company currently holds multiple property interests in Ontario with joint venture partners and is seeking further joint venture partners for other drill-ready properties in our portfolio. For more information, please visit our website at rmroyalty.com or call me at 604-922-2030.
Welcome to the Goddard Report. Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is investigative reporter Spencer Fernando. You can find his articles at SpencerFernando.com. Welcome back to the show, Spencer.
Good to be here.
The nation waited for the Trudeau government to make its announcement on the Trans Mountain Pipeline. They said yes. And interesting, they said they'd put no limits on Aboriginal groups buying into it. Which, do you think, would that end some of the controversy about it if Aboriginal people benefited from the pipeline going across their land?
It could. I mean, a lot of the environmental groups in Canada are really, if you look at where they get their funding from, as Vivian Krause has explained well, a lot of it comes from, billionaires in the U.S. who want to destroy Canada's energy industry. So they wouldn't be influenced, and they're going to oppose no matter what. I think the other thing is that, already, regardless of who gets sold to, if it does get sold, there's already a lot of support among Indigenous people for pipelines in the country. There's already Indigenous groups that are supporting it. But unfortunately, the media really often just focuses on, the Indigenous groups or Indigenous people who are against pipelines, and they don't show both sides of the story. And overall polls show that the majority of people, even in BC, support the pipeline. So definitely a skewed image gets presented. It's actually quite a popular project, and the fact that it has become controversial shows how, a small group of activists have been able to, make it look like they have more support than they really do.
Also, the government won't tell us in BC how much the provincial government has spent or the city councils of Burnaby and Vancouver have spent to fight the pipeline project. And it's the government that's going to probably make the most money out of this, of all, because of the royalties and taxes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's, again, the majority of people in BC, it's actually 2-1 in the latest poll in terms of support versus opposition. So I think the government would be a little embarrassed for people to find out they're spending tons of taxpayer money opposing something the majority of people actually want. So, yeah, I'm not surprised they don't want to share that with people.
Now, of course, they say there's some kind of competitive thing that they can't release it. Who are they competing against?
Yeah, they're competing against their own fear of, losing an election or losing support. That's the only thing I could think of. But, they'll use any reason to not be transparent with people if they realize it's not working out well for them. But, we'll see what happens. It's still going to go to court. The Trudeau government has already approved in the past, and then it got stopped in court. They had to go through it again. So just because they say they're going to do it, and really we've seen with this government saying something and doing something very different things for them.
Could they send it back to the Court of Appeal to make sure that the court's concerns were met?
Yeah, well, the court had ruled that they didn't do enough consultation, so they went through the motions, I guess, and did what the court said they had to do on consultation, then made the same decision again. But, it's still going to be, there's still going to be more court challenges, so we'll see what happens. If, really a left-wing judge gets a hold of it, then it could be blocked all over again.
The Prime Minister said he expected shovels to be in the ground this construction season. Do you think that'll really happen?
Well, I hope it does, but, it's, at this point with this government, given all the lies they've told, I think you can't take them at their word, and I'll believe it when I see it.
Why is Prime Minister Trudeau going to meet with President Trump at the White House this Thursday?
Well, a big part of it is, from what the reports say, he's going to be asking for help on getting the two detained Canadians, getting some help from the U.S. on getting them released by China. Communist China obviously has been bullying our country, and Trudeau's shown no strength at all. He preemptively says, I'm not going to retaliate. So China says, I guess we can really do whatever we want and get away with it. And the Canadians will not stand up for themselves. So he tried to get a meeting with his counterpart in China, the premier there. They ignored his request and then rejected it. Chrystia Freeland tried to get a meeting with the foreign minister of China and couldn't get a meeting. They rejected that as well. So we can't even talk to them. So all that we really have left is for Trudeau to go and ask Trump to talk to him, because at least China picks up the phone when Trump calls. In fact, Trump just had a call with President Xi, I think a day or so ago. So yeah, that's really all we have left. I mean, the government has shown so much weakness and shown that we can be bullied and pushed around, and we never retaliate, never do anything. So we just have to go beg our stronger friend to help us out.
Another thing that's happened in Canada from China, they've just denied another Canadian pork exporting company to do business with them. Are they going to keep turning up or turning down or turning tighter the economic screws on Canada?
Oh, for sure. I mean, the thing is, China has a lot to lose by fighting with the U.S. A lot of the media said, oh, the U.S. economy is vulnerable. I mean, China actually is more vulnerable because China sells so much more to the U.S. than the U.S. buys from China, which gives the U.S. a lot of leverage, and really China has a lot to lose. So they're looking around for, I think, a Western country to bully, and they say, well, let's see which country looks the weakest. And look at that, Justin Trudeau. He sucked up to us at the beginning. He obviously has some sort of strange love for, communist dictatorships, and then he's too weak to really respond with any strength. So anytime they want to send a message to the States or other countries, like Australia, where they're concerned about the growing influence of China, they just say, oh, we'll just do something against Canadians, and that's how they're sending a message now. So, again, to me, it's very it's fundamental human nature. If someone's bullying you, at some point you have to fight back. Even if you can't win, you send a message that it's going to be tough for them to bully you, and they're going to pay a price, and so they'll go look for somebody else. But the government obviously doesn't understand that.
Acid attacks in Canada, who's doing them?
Yeah, sure, but they seem to be on the rise, at least in Toronto, too, in about the past week, so that's concerning to see. And, it's a trend that we've seen a lot in London, knife attacks as well, but they've had a lot of acid attacks there. And it seems like it's starting to happen in Canada, too. So, one thing I talked about, I wrote about it, there's a lot of municipal leaders, they seem to forget that they're supposed to be running their cities, and they're supposed to be focusing on basic things like fighting crime and giving more resources to the police, cracking down on law breaking. But instead, you see people like Mayor Tory and City Econ, and what are they always talking about? They're always talking about international issues, or what's happening in the States, or what's happening nationally. They're kind of forgetting you're supposed to be running a city, administering services and fighting crime. So I think that's part of the problem. And then there's the political correctness reasons, obviously, and so they just prefer not to talk about it. And if you're leading an institution and there's a serious problem and you don't talk about it or deal with it, then it's just going to get worse.
Is Trudeau succeeding in controlling the mainstream media and social media leading up to the October election?
Well, he's certainly trying. He's having, I think, more trouble with social media, just because those companies are not, they're not based in Canada, and they're huge companies, so they don't really have to listen to anything that Trudeau says. But they are kind of issuing kind of some threats, or saying, oh, we may look into shutting down social media accounts that don't listen to us. Which, that's pretty authoritarian, pretty disturbing to see a supposedly democratic country musing about shutting down social media, considering how many people share their opinions on it. He's having more success with the media in Canada. I think if you look at CBC, they just did a poll, and they said, they asked Canadians about climate change. The majority of people are not willing to pay that much to deal with it. And then CBC says they're starting to do but there's real cost to it, and you have to do something. And basically just echoing the exact same language as Catherine McKenna. So I think we're starting to see, to some extent, the effort to control the media having some success in Canada. And then you add on to that the fact that I think, just the average person in the media, obviously not everybody, but the average person is definitely left of center, and they're just really somewhat biased against conservatives. So I think the closer the election gets, the more that bias comes out as well. So we'll see what happens, but more success controlling local media or national media than social media.
What about the nearly $600 million Trudeau is going to hand to some of the richest families in Canada to keep their dying newspapers going?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the thing that's really been overlooked by people, at least in the coverage of it, which, I mean, makes sense because the media is covering a bailout of themselves. But it's, what the government's really trying to do is not exert, direct control as in, they just call them up and say, hey, this is what you're running. But it's a very self-interest thing, right? If you have a newspaper that's desperate for cash, and they know that one party is going to give them money, the Liberals, and another party probably won't give them money, the Conservatives, well, then it starts to seep into their minds, well, I guess if we want to stay around, we better skew our coverage a little bit for the Liberals to make sure they stay in office. And it can be very insidious. People might not even be aware that it's influencing them, but that's why it's so dangerous in the first place to have these organizations dependent on the government for funding, because it just creates an automatic skew towards whoever's going to give them the most money. If you're in power, you can always promise money for the media, and the media will want to see you stay in power. So that's kind of the opposite of what the free press is supposed to be about.
We'll have more with Spencer Fernando right after this.
Aben Resources Limited is a gold exploration company with significant projects in British Columbia and the Yukon, trading on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol ABN, and the OTCQB, symbol ABNAF. Surrounded by world-class gold deposits and mines, Aben's 23,000 hectares Forest Kerr Gold Project is located in the heart of the Golden Triangle in northwestern BC. For more information, visit us at abenresources.com.
Grand Portage Resources' Herbert Gold Project in southeast Alaska highlights increased gold resource, indicated and inferred, of 860,000 ounces, in excess of 10 grams per ton gold. Expansion drilling is planned on the Herbert Gold property for the summer of 2019. Grand Portage Resources trading symbols are GPG on the TSX Venture, GPTRF on the OTCQB, and GPB on Frankfurt. For more information, please visit our website, grandportage.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Spencer Fernando. Spencer, could Canada have been involved with the other Five Eyes countries in spying on the Trump campaign?
I mean, it's always possible. I don't think I've seen direct evidence that Canada was involved, but it wouldn't surprise me. The elites in all countries, whether people like Trump or not, it's similar to Brexit, where the elites kind of had an idea that an election should go a certain way, and really couldn't even fathom that people might not do what they expected them to do, and so they lie and they spy on people. And it wouldn't shock me at all. But I haven't seen any evidence of that so far. I think if there was, then I'm sure the U.S. would be lording that over us to get a little more leverage in some of these trade issues we have with them. But I wouldn't be shocked at all. I mean, the Five Eyes is about all the countries being connected and sharing information, so if the U.S. was spying or if the U.K. was spying, then it's likely Canada, at the very least, would have been aware of it to some extent. Whether there would have been active participation, that's another thing.
Do you think NAFTA Mark II is going to be approved by both Canada and the U.S.?
I think so. The Conservatives and Liberals both seem to support it here. The rhetoric has kind of changed, and there's been criticism, but the basic support is there. And in the U.S., I'm pretty sure it's going to get approved, if only for political reasons. I don't think the Democrats in the Midwestern states, those states that are going to be swing states in the election, I don't think they want Trump to be able to say, I've got this great trade deal that's going to help you out, but the Democrats won't pass it. So I think they'll figure it out in the states as well.
Depending on the outcome of the October election, could Western separation be on the table again?
Certainly. I think there's already polls showing that 50% of people in Alberta and Saskatchewan are open to separation. The Trudeau government has Bill C-48, Bill C-69. They've added to the alienation because these are bills that in many ways discriminate against Western Canadian energy. In one case, you have basically tougher rules being applied to tankers carrying Alberta oil than to tankers in the east carrying oil from places like Saudi Arabia and Nigeria. So that's obviously messed up. And then you have the fact that Quebec seems able to, and credit to Quebec's leaders, they're very smart politics, but when they don't get what they want, they start threatening separation. That's worked out well for them in terms of getting money. They keep taking, Quebec's politicians keep taking billions of dollars from Alberta, while at the same time saying, we don't want your pipelines going through our province. So that's pretty hypocritical. And at some point, I think either people are actually going to want to separate, or they're going to say, look, threatening separation has worked out well for Quebec. And if people aren't going to listen to what Alberta's saying, and if people aren't going to respect Alberta and respect the contributions Alberta makes, the vast amount of money Canada gets from Alberta oil, at some point I think people in Alberta will say, well, I guess we'll just start threatening to separate too. That seems to be the only way to get people to listen. So it'll be unfortunate if it gets to that point, but, I really couldn't blame people in Alberta for looking and saying, well, that's the only way people will listen at this point. If Trudeau doesn't want to scrap C-69 and C-48, then, the hardball approach is probably what's going to be left.
If the Trudeau government rules on pipelines and the environment remain, could the Trans Mountain expansion be the last pipeline ever built in Canada?
It could be. Certainly the last, big pipeline. There might be some smaller projects, but yeah, the problem is, it's really embarrassing actually for Canada, because no other country in the world squanders their resources the way we do. If you look at some of the GDP per capita numbers, we have this idea that we're a super rich country, and as countries go, Canada's pretty rich, but we're about in lumped in with, places like Austria. And you think Austria doesn't have a whole ton of natural resources. They're in a prosperous area, but in terms of natural resources, Canada's basically unmatched. We should be far closer to some of the richest countries in the world, not just the relatively wealthy countries. So we're definitely squandering our resources. A big part of it is all the money coming in from the U.S. that filters through the Canadian groups that then campaign against Canadian energy. And I think a lot of people still haven't woken up to that. You look at all the criticism directed at, people who are, supposedly funding pro-conservative groups in Canada. But these are Canadians funding groups. That's allowed. That's totally legal for Canadians to fund groups. But all this money coming in from foreign countries, especially the States, where you have people who, they're saying it's all about the environment and, we're fighting tankers and pipelines, but they don't protest pipelines anywhere else. All the protests are in Canada, not in the States, not in South America, not in Russia, not anywhere else. So it's obviously more of an agenda that's going on. It's not about the environment, and it's definitely had an impact. Look how tough it is for us to even get one pipeline approved. The States is massively increasing oil production. So definitely something going on here that's not good, and we're missing out on a lot of prosperity, and really people could be a lot richer and our lives could be a lot better if we could get it taken care of.
Yes, well, in Seattle they have pipeline protests, but that's because they want oil pipelines to the waterfront so that oil isn't transported there by risky oil railway tankers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's their pipeline protest. They want them.
Yeah, and if you look at those maps, I forget which group. I think it's Oil Sands Action. Maybe on Twitter they put up these maps, and it shows where the tankers are at any one time in the world. And so they show Canada, a few tankers up on the west coast, and then all the protests there. And then the Gulf of Mexico, just absolutely filled with oil tankers. And where are the protests? Where are the big rallies? Where are all the groups? And nothing. So it's not proportionate at all to where there actually is a lot of activity and transit of oil and resources. So that's how you know that something more sinister is going on.
Well, if you go to the site marinetraffic.com, you can see where every ship in the world is. And I don't see how adding one extra dot a day is really going to endanger our environment. And that's how much tanker traffic they would get. Instead of one tanker a week, you have one a day, escorted by tugboats and so on. And it's double-hulled, and as far as I know, there hasn't been a major accident involving a double-hulled tanker yet.
Yeah, and again, it's just I think there's kind of a connection here between what happens with China, where China looks and says, okay, what's the country we can most get away with bullying? And it looks like it's Canada. And a lot of the activist groups look which country is most willing to be apologetic and apologize for having resources. Oh, it looks like Canada. So everyone picks on the person who looks like they're weak, and unfortunately that's how Canada looks right now.
We'll have more with Spencer Fernando right after the break.
Hi, I'm Douglas Mason, President and CEO of Magnum Gold Corp, MGI, and the TSX Venture Exchange. A 2015 drill program on the LH property intersected several high-grade gold intersections, including 11 meters of 20.66 grams per ton gold. Additional drill targets on the LH property have been identified by a 2018 drone airborne magnetic survey to further evaluate a pyrrhotite-enriched gold-bearing system. Please visit our website at magnumgoldcorp.com.
Don't miss out. Stay informed. Receive the HowStreet.com weekly recap with thought-provoking podcasts, radio, and articles delivered to your inbox. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage at HowStreet.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Spencer Fernando. Spencer, with the protests in Hong Kong about their proposed extradition treaty with China, we're hearing that there's more interest in Vancouver real estate again by Hong Kong interests, even though we have a 20% foreign buyer tax. Maybe that wouldn't be much of a deterrent when you've seen the high-end real estate in West Vancouver, the toniest real estate in Canada, go down from, say, $14 million to $7 million. So for the rich in Hong Kong, even a 20% bonus on top of that, they're still getting a bargain if they buy here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I mean, I do think Canada should have a ban on foreign home buyers. I think I'd be okay with exceptions for human rights circumstances. I mean, if there are people in Hong Kong who, they're fighting for freedom, fighting for their rights, who unfortunately they do have real reason to be worried for their lives because Communist China is obviously trying to impose their authoritarian judicial system on Hong Kong, which is quite a tragedy. So, certainly if there's some exceptions. But for the most part, look, we have to make sure that, our cities are affordable for our own citizens. And if you're letting in, just massive, whatever country it is, if you're letting in massive amounts of money from foreign countries come into your country and drive up land prices, then a lot of your own citizens can't afford to live there anymore. So I think, to me, that's unacceptable. And New Zealand has, for similar reasons, has done the same thing. They've got almost a total ban on foreign home buyers. And I think that's something Canada needs to, really implement because it's not right that people in our own country can't afford to live in our own cities.
What kind of results are we getting from the latest polls on immigration?
Yeah, there was a recent poll showed that the majority of Canadians say, I think it was 64% say the government should be focused on reducing immigration levels out of concerns that we're bringing in so many people that it's tough to integrate. And then the other 36% said that they think there should be more immigration. So, and it's interesting how the government responded to that. Ahmed Hussein said he was concerned by the numbers and basically started lecturing people about how, we need to have increased immigration. So that's, first of all, that's very undemocratic. I mean, the vast majority of people are saying they want one policy, and the government says, no, you're wrong. You need to be educated on it. So that's extremely arrogant, as if somehow disagreeing with the government is an uneducated position. But second, if you look at the numbers actually that we're bringing in, I mean, it's among the highest in the world on a per capita basis. I mean, the U.S. at most, they've got more of a illegal immigration problem. But they're bringing in, 1.5 million a year, and 1.5 would be a huge year for them. I mean, you're talking 1 million a year on average. So Canada, we're bringing in the equivalent, about 1/10 the size of the States. Now the equivalent of the U.S. bringing in 3.5 million people every year. So you think they're having their big debate over a much smaller number on a per capita basis. And then anyone who says, maybe bringing in a massive amount of people every year could be a problem. They say, no, you can't think that, unacceptable. So, yeah, I think there does need to be a debate on immigration. I mean, we had pretty high numbers under Harper, but there certainly wasn't the integration concerns then. And Trudeau took those high numbers, and even with all the polls showing people didn't want it increased it by almost a full third. So, government obviously really doesn't care what people think.
What's your opinion on national pharmacare?
Well, it seems totally unaffordable. I think even the Liberals know it's unaffordable, but they, this is something they do every election when they're worried. They look at what the NDP is proposing or what the NDP's talked about, and they say, yeah, this is a great idea. We'll look into that. And then they promise it before the election without any real details. Say, yeah, certainly great idea. Something we're for sure going to do. And then if they win, it just kind of fades away and then doesn't really happen. So I think that's what's happening here. I don't think it's really a serious proposal from the Liberals. I think they're going to try to use it as an election issue. But, yeah, I mean, the way the government's been spending money, the way our budget is, definitely not affordable at this time.
Spencer, do you think we can trust Elections Canada to make sure the election is fair?
Well, I certainly have concerns. I would differentiate between all the poll workers. I mean, I'm not concerned about the poll workers across the country, anything happening there. My concern would be the top leadership of Elections Canada, though. I mean, the fact, if you look at what SNC-Lavalin was accused of doing, I think about 18 people connected to their company giving donations beyond the limit, most of them to the Liberals. Nobody went to jail. Nobody really got in trouble. One person got a very minor slap on the wrist. He was also kept from the Canadian people. And then you look at Dean Del Mastro, who was accused of overspending his own campaign funds. He even spent some time in jail. So it's very interesting. And that's what concerns me, is when you see a double standard for someone who is a conservative and then someone who, or a group of people who are connected to SNC-Lavalin, which of course is connected very closely to the Liberals. That raises some concerns, and you wonder, okay, if Elections Canada is certainly making decisions based on, who's in the elite and who's not, and who's well connected and who's not, then I think they're right to have some doubts about what's going on.
Spencer, thank you so much for chatting with us.
Good talking to you.
My guest has been investigative reporter Spencer Fernando. You can find his articles at SpencerFernando.com. You're listening to the Goddard Report on TalkDigitalNetwork.com. If you have any questions for our guests like Spencer, you can send them to info@HowStreet.com. Find us on Twitter at TalkDigitalNet, our YouTube channel, Talk Digital Network. I'm Jim Goddard. Thank you for listening.
Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. The Goddard Report is available online and mobile at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. The Goddard Report is a production of How Street Media Incorporated.